Hello viewers, it's good to come to you once again. My name is Ralph Aite, your host on Tourism TV on Business Television Africa. We are here once again to delve into the tourism industry in Africa. Are we doing well? Are we not doing well? What are the potentials? What are the threats to the development of tourism in Africa? Today, I have a very, very special guest for you who has a very, very deep insight into the development of tourism over the last couple of years. Stand by and enjoy our program for today. Hello viewers, good to see you again. Today we have Dr. Joseph Mensah Ansah, a very, very seasoned hospitality personality who is here with us to go, as I said, into tourism development in Africa. Dr. Mensah Ansah currently is a lecturer at the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration, and he is ready to take us where we want to be with regards to upgrading ourselves in tourism in Africa. Dr. Mensah, you're very much welcome to the show today. Really, it's like me coming to you as a student to learn a lot, because I recollect with nostalgia that you were the very first manager for Buswa Beach, one of Ghana's leading facilities in terms of beaches. And today we are glad to have you on our show. And I just want to tell you that this is a very special show that is being carried all over Africa. So you have a very wonderful African audience to listen to us. And I know that with your profile, you are very much prolific in terms of tourism development. Dr. Mensah, tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of your involvement with tourism in Africa.
That's quite a challenging question, because I really don't know where to start or where to end. My involvement with tourism in Africa actually started in Ghana. And I was so keen on tourism that eventually I wanted to know what happens in other countries in terms of tourism. Initially I was involved with operations, but along the line, it became to realize that education and human resource development was the key issue driving tourism. So my interest gradually moved from operations into human resource development. And currently, I happen to be the chairperson for tourism and hospitality schools in Africa. So that's how far we have come. And this association looks at harmonizing training, tourism and hospitality training across the continent, trying to share lecturers, trying to do student internships, exchanges, so as we can promote tourism across Africa.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. Now, Doc, with regards to tourism education, I don't think that is very, very well known and well pronounced in Africa. You hear people, when they are asked, what profession are you interested in, you know, they talk about human resource, project management, maybe banking, etc. Why are people not interested in training themselves and specializing in tourism development?
The solution is with the culture of Africa. If you can recollect, in those days, people into catering and people into hospitality were seen to be people who really didn't have a clear-cut direction, career paths. Right. But now, hospitality and tourism has become a profession, and it's become so technical now that professional education is needed in order to be in that industry. Even as of today, as we speak, especially in Ghana, if you speak of tourism, hospitality, people equate it to catering. Right. But catering is only an aspect of hospitality. We need to create awareness, which we haven't done. For instance, there is no sensitization or career counseling in terms of hospitality. Those people who have chosen hospitality probably just came across it per chance. And they join it because they find it as a passion. Indeed, I say hospitality and tourism is a calling. Right. You need to be called. You need to love people. You need to love making people happy in order that you may be in that industry. So it's actually not everybody who can really be in tourism and hospitality.
I'll give my personal example because I came into the industry simply by serving my late dad's guests. Okay, I was more or less the waiter of the house when everybody had left home. And then, you know, it progressed into that level of professionalism. Now, in Africa, we are reliably informed, and we know that Africans are very, very nice people. You know, we smile, etc. But when it comes to the service delivery, we find ourselves wanting. And, you know, sometimes there's the contention that we do it even without apology. Now, going back to this issue of education, obviously it's lack of education. How many institutions do we have in Africa that are strong enough, and are these just enough for us to be able to get to the pinnacle that we want to be in terms of tourism development?
In terms of the whole of Africa, I dare say that there are some countries that are extremely strong with tourism training. Mention countries like Kenya, Seychelles, Mauritius, South Africa, Morocco, Egypt. Okay. Now these countries set out to train their staff, and they have national tourism and hospitality schools. So every country in Africa that is doing well has a national tourism and hospitality school. Okay. Those countries on the west coast of Africa, surprisingly, we don't have such schools. Right. So Ghana, Gambia used to have one that is not doing too well. Nigeria, there's a proliferation of schools that we really don't know what we're doing. But take South Africa, they have virtually about 15 well-recognized schools up to the university level. Kenya has Utali College, that is a world center for tourism and hospitality training. Mauritius has it. So if you want to develop your tourism industry, in fact, the first way to go is to have a national tourism school. Otherwise, you'll be beaten about the bush. And the issue of Africans, you know, we are keen in doing service, but I always say that we do the right service wrongly because we don't know the principles of service. We think that being nice with people is hospitality. No, hospitality has moved beyond that. Hospitality is now so technical that you need to be schooled in how to serve. Now, if you don't have those technicalities and you think that just meeting somebody and smiling or giving directions, even in directions, we give directions wrongly because we don't know what it is. We use a tree, we use a kiosk, we use color of buildings and so forth. Right. But hospitality is a profession by itself. And unless African countries come to realize that hospitality is a profession, we will just be beaten about the bush.
Okay. Viewers, let's share some statistics. The African Development Bank is telling us that Africa's arrivals grew from 37 million in 2003 to 63 million in 2012. So that's about 100% change in 10 years. And then international tourism receipts in Africa totaled 43 billion, okay? And we move on, as you rightly said, Doctor, that where the schools are, it reflects that in 2012, Morocco, Egypt, Madagascar, Seychelles, South Africa, Egypt showed double-digit growth, okay? Now, what is happening to West Africa?
West Africa is an issue of government policy. Take, for instance, Ghana and the current hot cut situation. It's taking us, hot cut is the hotel and tourism training catering school for Ghana. It's taken us all these years, since I think 1996, to come to terms that Ghana needs a national tourism and hospitality training school. We've been moving sites, Meridian, Star Hotel, Eridek, Gimpa, back to where the school is currently is. And we're still beating about the bush, not knowing really what to do. So in terms of West Africa, because all the other regions have developed, the South, the North, the East, the Central, they've all developed. It's except the western part of Africa that we have these challenges. And investigating is an issue of policy. Government has a desire to do it, but the willpower to implement those decisions is not forthcoming. Yet, we all know I mean, from the stats, the importance of tourism. In fact, there is no country currently in Africa that is not involved in tourism. And for countries like Madagascar, Seychelles, Mauritius, in fact, tourism contributes about 50%, between 25 and 50% of their GDP. Ghana, we're making 4.7% of our GDP. And even then, tourism in Ghana is the highest growing sector, 10% growth, beating agriculture, oil, and so. Okay, yet we don't have the right infrastructure to get it growing. I dare say that in the west coast of Africa, tourism is growing amorphously. Okay, there is no clear-cut direction. Tourism is growing by itself. All that we need is for nations or governments to give it an impetus, give it direction, so we can grow appropriately.
So viewers, we're going on a break. When we come back, we're going to look at the products that Africa has to offer and what gives them the competitive edge over other tourism destinations in the Americas, Asia, and Europe. Welcome back to Tourism TV. We're continuing by understanding the products that Africa has to offer the world. It can be products that are within Africa that Africans are used to but are packaged to suit Africans, whilst products that are also foreign to the incoming tourist. Doctor, what has Africa got to offer its African populace as well as those coming into Africa from outside Africa?
Indeed, Africa has got everything to offer. Really? Right from nature, right from heritage, culture, environment. Even the people itself can be packaged as a product and as a service for them. The challenge with Africa is that we have not identified the products very well, which means that we need to know the tourist needs. Okay, so one, we need to identify the needs of the tourists and package our products and services in such a way that we'll be able to meet the needs of the tourists. That is what we are still battling with. For instance, when it comes to product development, we want to develop our products to be like that of the Americans. Meanwhile, they are coming from America to Africa. Yeah. And therefore, yes, why should we develop our hotels like hotels in America? Why can't we go natural, using natural materials to develop our hotels?
Red bricks.
Exactly. Yeah. Take cuisine. They come looking for African cuisine, yet we serve them continental dishes. And therefore, we need to package our products very well. For the products, we don't have any challenge with it. If you take, for instance, nature, we have all the animals. We have all the natural parks. Ghana has 2 or 3 natural parks that even Ghanaians themselves don't know. How many people are aware of Ankasa Game Reserve? Right. Everybody speaks of Mole, but Ankasa is another big tourism attraction in Ghana. And it happens in all the African countries, okay? The products are there, they are not packaged well, and they are not marketed well. So the people come in, and they have very scanty information as to where to go. Right. That is why if you take the length of stay of tourists in Africa, the duration is very short because they can just go to a destination and virtually they see all they want to see in one day and they come back to Accra and they are gone. And it's not just a problem of Ghana, it's a problem of Africa. We need to do proper product identification which will link to the needs of the tourists, and then we package and market these products as nations. In that case, we'll be doing very well. One other thing that we don't do well, we don't market Africa as a continent. Right. We market Africa as countries. Okay. I don't see why somebody cannot start in Gambia and end in Ghana. Right. Or start in Ghana and end in South Africa. Okay? So international tourism. Okay? So, and it's part of the packaging and marketing. We are marketing ourselves as individual countries, yet we are marketing Africa. Right. So if the person is already in Africa, and that is where the bulk of the expenses, so the moment they get into Africa, moving around Africa is not that difficult. Right. But we don't make the best use of them when they're in Africa. Right. So they just visit one country and off they go, which eventually we don't generate enough money or income from our tourism.
I very much agree with you because I'm just asking myself, how much domestic tourism do we even encourage? Okay, I was watching a documentary on Zaire, and it took a truck 30 days to travel from Kisangani to Kinshasa, a distance of about 600 kilometers, okay? So I'm asking myself, I mean, how is this feasible, okay? But this is unfortunately the picture that we portray outside. I want to ask, what do we have to do to, first of all, encourage domestic tourism, and then, as you rightly mentioned, intra-Africa or inter-Africa tourism? Yeah.
Domestic tourism is an issue of policy. For instance, Ghana, in those days, we were encouraged to go on excursions. Right. Nowadays, we are not. And we are not for a reason. Our roads are very dangerous. And it's not just in Ghana, in the whole of Africa. Traveling by road is quite a journey. Right. Traveling by air, we don't have too many air connections, exactly. Internal flights. So that makes it difficult to promote domestic tourism. Aside that, the hospitality facilities are quite expensive and beyond the pockets of most domestic tourists. So government needs to come in. It's an issue of policy. Go to Kakum, for instance. It's not so exciting even to go there as a Ghanaian, okay? Because we've not packaged it well. Even though there is a marketing scheme, it doesn't really promote domestic tourism. and it cuts across most of our products. We haven't really packaged it for the Ghanaian. We think that tourism is foreign, but foreign tourism starts with domestic tourism.
Right,
okay.
right.
If the people don't know what they have, how can they entice others into your country? And that's why I like those countries that are leading in tourism. You go to Kenya, you go to Mauritius, everybody speaks tourism.
Right.
Pick a taxi from Nairobi Airport, and you'll be talking about tourism. Pick a taxi from Kutuka Airport, you ask for the next destination, no idea. What's in Cape Coast, what's exciting about Cape Coast? No idea. Exciting about, even Accra. Ask for tourism attractions in Accra. We can't count them off our fingers. Okay. But we need, if we promote domestic tourism very well, certainly international tourism will grow. So we need to do it. It's an issue of policy, issue of security, issue of infrastructure. Infrastructure is quite bad in most African countries and makes moving around Africa quite serious. I remember in those days, Europeans were coming through the channel to the north of Africa, and they would drive all the way in those big trucks to even West Africa. Nowadays, that type of tourism is gone. And we've lost that market, which is a big chunk of mass tourism.
So that notwithstanding, the understanding is that, one, we need to start from school, literally, in that a child can have the opportunity to visit, let's say, a castle somewhere, okay, or go with the parents to a picnic, okay. It's a habit that we need to develop. And then looking at it also with a bigger picture, government needs some involvement, okay. You realize across Africa, I've looked at the profiles of the various tourism ministers, and you realize that they are not people who are directly involved or who've been involved directly in the tourism industry. Ghana, for example, we are fortunate to have the 15-year tourism development plan, okay? There is some effort being done, but it's not great. Doc, what is your take on this? Because what happens is that it looks like year in, year out, beautiful plans are drawn up, and it's not just Ghana that has that plan. Several African countries have that plan, but implementing it becomes an issue. What do we have to do?
If you take Ghana, for example, the colonial development plans, there were two. The first 7-year colonial plan by Gorgesbeck, that was 1919 to 1926, didn't have anything on tourism. In fact, the second development plan, colonial development plan, also didn't have anything on tourism. The major issues in those plans were development of infrastructure to facilitate extraction industry. So the mining or the natural resources. So you see the railway lines going through bauxite, gold area, manganese area, and that was it. But come independence, the first national development plan, that's post-colonial by Kwame Nkrumah, that's the 1959 till 1965, then recognized tourism as an economic venture. Okay. That's when we started building the 6 state hotels and the 5 catering rest houses all across Ghana. However, Ghana couldn't sustain this because in the second post-independence plan, somewhere along the line, there was a coup in 1972, and that agenda was thrown overboard. So since then, there have been development plans until we ended up with the one from 1996 to 2010, the first 15-year development plan. Okay. That had 4 cardinal areas. We were looking at product development, marketing, financing, and human resource. Okay. So 4 key areas. This was for 15 years. And we couldn't have an implementation team. There were attempts to form implementation because 15-year development plan needs to be broken down into strategic plans, into independent tactical plans, so that we could implement them along the line. Somehow, that did not happen until we developed the current one, the 2013 to 2027 15-year development plan. In fact, it's nothing more than a revision of the 1996 210 plan. The question you ask is this: if we have all these beautiful plans, why are we not making any headway? we are not making any headway because we are not coordinating issues. Tourism is an intersectorial activity. And I always say that the tourism ministry cannot stand on its own. Because, for instance, when you are developing roads, it's actually tourism. If you send in water, electricity to another area, it's actually tourism. Now, why can't we develop all these with tourism as the pinnacle or focal point, so that every development action that we take, we have tourism being part of it? Because tourism actually hints on all areas of our life. The issue also is the issue of leadership. Okay? Take again Ghana as an example. For the past 10 or 13 years or so, no minister has stayed in office for more than 18 months.
Whoa.
The deputy ministers go up to about 21 months. Okay? But if you have a big document like the current National Development Plan, take about 300 pages. Now, before the minister finishes reading it, she's off. Okay? So, to me, it's not the ministers being industry-oriented, but it's them having the opportunity to stay long enough to implement the plans. Because before they get started, they are moved. And we're hoping to see what happens with the current leadership. So it's an issue of leadership. Aside the leadership, there are several reports that talks about professionalism within the ministry itself and its implementation agencies like GTA, Ghana Tourism Authority. The human capacity is there, but we need to improve on their skills. Again, it's an issue of policy, staff training and development. What is the training policy for tourism? If there's no training policy, it means that we are not training our staff. And therefore, we will draw up all the beautiful plans, but when it comes to implementation, it becomes an issue, because what we need to do is to have a permanent implementation committee that will oversee all these, break this long-term 15-year plan into maybe 5-year segments, interlink these with the Tourism Act, Act 817 of 2011. We have the tourism policy, which was in 2006, which has never been rectified, and now I'm sure that is dead. The tourism development plan itself, the current one, needs cabinet and parliamentary ratification, which we have not done.
Some of the plans were supposed to be executed in 2013.
Exactly. And we already 2013, half is gone, and we have not even ratified what is in there. So unless we do the ratification and we set up the implementation committee, permanent implementation committees, look, the 2027 will come and pass, and then we will sit down and draw another 15-year development plan, and that will end in 2030, 2035.
Right,
okay.
Right,
so we need to, as a nation, and it's not just Ghana, cuts across Africa, pay particular attention to tourism, especially tourism policy and tourism legal frameworks. Okay? For instance, you take the Tourism Act, Act 817. There are several things in there that we need to do, but we are doing or implementing the act in a very haphazard manner. We take the 1% and we start implementing the 1%, even not according to 1% tourism levy, okay. Not according to what has been prescribed in the act. You take HR. The act says that all licensed hotels should have a registered hotel manager. Right. When it comes to inspections, the act is saying that we should have an inspectorate division or inspectors, licensed inspectors. Till today, we don't know what is happening to some of those issues raised in the act. And therefore, it's an issue of government policy and leadership. If leadership probably is allowed to stay a bit longer, then probably we can move on in the right direction.
I've had the understanding that, like we discussed earlier on, domestic tourism, inter-African tourism. But you realize that even, for example, airlines, when they advertise, and I mean airlines operating within Africa, when they advertise, they hardly encourage you, they just say fly with us. They hardly put packages together that, for example, I'm traveling to Ghana, say on a certain airline, when I come, this is what I can do, or I'm traveling to Namibia, you know, this is what I can do. I think in summary, we have aside the policy issue, we have a marketing problem, okay? Because if it is shorter for me to travel within Africa, okay, why can't Africans rather encourage ourselves, okay, we master it very well before we get people traveling from outside Africa to come, because it's quite expensive if to you know, encourage people to come here, especially in a very competitive global market. How can we correct this?
It's an issue of education. I was just having a chat with somebody, and I said we need to start tourism education right from the president all the way through to cabinet, through to the minister, to parliament, to everybody down there, so that we all understand tourism. Okay, for now, we pretend that we understand tourism, but we don't. We don't understand tourism. We think that tourism is just moving people around. Tourism is quite bigger than that. And if you don't have a national policy or a national posture that we want to develop tourism, you'll be just moving around in circles. Take the level of support for the Ministry of Tourism, and you'll be shocked. In fact, if you take away salaries, they virtually have nothing, no money to do any other thing. When it comes to the airlines, yes, certainly some African countries have their own airlines, but again, the people running the airlines are not seeing the airline management from the tourism point of view.
Right.
Otherwise, they'll promote tourism, okay, as part of it. For those of us who don't have any airline, where we have turned our airline into a restaurant, that is another thing altogether. Who will carry your people for you, and who will make noise about the products that you have? Okay, so developing the airline industry itself is something that if we Ghanaians want to move forward, we need to really take a critical look at it. The other countries that have developed well, Egypt, you have Egypt Airlines, Kenya has KQ, Mauritius has airlines, what's the other one, the one that just got lost? Malaysia. They even have air taxis, okay, moving people from district to district. And that is why they are growing, okay, and they market their country when you get on those airlines. So, but we can do better than what we are doing now. We can market our various African countries right through our airline advertising, onboard advertising, billboard, outdoor advertising, and so forth. We can do better than what we are doing now.
Viewers, it's getting quite interesting. We're going for a break, which will be our last break for this interview session. The next session, we're going to look at our mother country, Ghana. This interview is being conducted at the Coconut Grove Regency Hotel in Ghana. Subsequently, we'll be moving around in other African countries and destinations. What we want to look at is what is Ghana doing currently. We have 1.7 billion US dollars being contributed to our GDP in the year 2012. We are told that there's a lot of potential with regards to tourism development in Ghana. Tourism is contributing the 4th highest foreign exchange to Ghana. We can't take it for granted, because the other contributors, which is one, gold, cocoa first, gold second, and then remittances are quite wobbly, not very, very reliable. We all know that last year we did very poorly in terms of our cocoa receipts and our gold receipts. But Ghana is a very peaceful country. We have a very good image out there. How can we package Ghana and make sure that we get even more than we are getting currently? Please stand by, do not go, and we'll continue in a bit. Welcome back. The United Nations Tourism Organization and the World Tourism Council is telling us that tourism employs 8.2 million Africans. In Ghana, it employs in excess of 300,000 Ghanaians in this industry. That is really big. But how specialized are we? How interested are we to push tourism from number 4 to number 1? Doctor, I think we'll go back to education in this segment. Now, when it comes to hospitality training, you mentioned that we have the hotel and catering school, which is very, very challenged. What other facilities are there that we can rely on to train our human resource? Because really, people will want to visit Africa and see Africans serving them in the hospitable manner. What do we have to do in terms of education here in Ghana?
In terms of the education in Ghana, they can be looked at different levels.
Right.
You've got the managerial level, the skills and competency level, and the supervisory level in the middle. The tourism industry and the hospitality sector is actually served by the supervisory and the skills level. And that is where we are challenged as a nation. Right. Indeed, for now, as we speak, apart from the MBTI schools, all the private tourism and hotel schools don't have national accreditation.
Oh.
And even the hotel, tourism and catering training school doesn't have accreditation.
That is not funny.
Yeah, so you go into those schools and you cannot continue your education in that sector.
So how can we fix this? Doesn't anybody know?
We know.
Doesn't the minister know?
We are aware.
So what's the problem?
It's taken us a bit of time to fix it. Eventually we will fix it, because I think in the papers last week, they sent us requests for proposals on how to develop the Hot Cat Institute now. So now Ghana is making an effort after all these years. When it gets to the management level, training personnel in that area is not too difficult. Cape Coast University is doing it. All the polytechnics are having diploma HND programs in there. GIMPA is actually specializing in BSc hotel management or hospitality management. So the top level, we don't have too much of a problem. It's the middle and the base. And the base is bigger than the top. Okay, and that is where we have the challenge. And unfortunately, it takes a bit of capital to do those levels of training, because you need to set up your demonstration labs. Right. So if it's kitchen, you need the kitchen equipment, F&B, you need the F&B lab, front office rooms and so forth. So that is quite capital intensive, and it's at times very difficult for the individual to do. And then we need government to set in. So unless we set up our national tourism or hospitality and tourism training school, we will still be beating about the bush. So we need to develop a human resource, and that will take care of the quality of service, which is a major issue in Ghana. Go to any of the hotels, including the 5 stars, and customers are complaining about service.
Right.
And service is about people and the staff who serve. And if the staff don't know what to do, we cannot force service. Service should be practiced, it should be part of the staff. And we need to do enough training to cover service.
Doctor, for educational purposes, I'm sure our viewers have been thinking through, do I allow my son or my daughter to go into the hospitality industry? What are the prospects? Or even you yourself, you're considering, is this an area I want to put my life? Is this an area I want to have my daily bread? Doctor, what are the prospects for somebody wanting to go into the hospitality industry? And which areas would you want people to consider seriously?
In fact, anybody going to hospitality and tourism has a very broad field to play with, okay? Because hospitality and tourism covers virtually every subject area. Right. I keep telling students, when you finish a hotel and tourism school, don't just apply to hotels. Indeed, you can apply to anywhere. You do HR, just like somebody doing HR. You do accounting, you do entrepreneurship, you do hospitality, and therefore you are even much more better than somebody doing a specific career area. Hospitality is a way of life. And if you have the interest and you get into it, your career options are unlimited. Right. Just as if you get into other areas. Take, for instance, banks. The banks are now recruiting hospitality and tourism students because they have the service edge to it. So instead of picking pure bankers, pure people doing banking and finance, they are now taking people who are doing tourism and hospitality because they want to serve their people. Banking is now becoming more IT, and therefore they prefer more IT biased people. But when it comes to the front line, dealing with the people, you need people who are hospitable. And that is where hotel and hospitality and tourism education becomes very key. In fact, the field is very broad. You can do anything at all. Facilities management is part of being a hospitality person. Tour operations, tour guiding, fleet management, transport, procurement. Procurement is even a career path in hospitality and tourism. So you can do virtually anything when we are into hospitality and tourism. Just that we have not created the awareness, we have not created enough platforms. We are not doing any educational fairs when it comes to hospitality and tourism. Therefore, most people are at a loss as to what is in there for them when they choose hospitality and tourism. In fact, most people, you mention hospitality and they think it's catering.
Right.
Okay, but hospitality is more than catering. Right. But it's up to us in industry to educate the public that, look, hospitality is actually a very broad area that you can fit any part of your life into.
Some years back, it looked like there was a conscious effort to promote conferences in Ghana, which resulted in the dome at next to the conference center being set up. It looks like there's a little lull. Yes, there are things happening in the various hotels, etc. People are improving, building up capacity, etc., etc. How do you think Ghana should package this conference market? Because I know the conference market has ancillary revenues coming with it. For example, people come into Accra, they have the opportunity to go to the various attractions in Elmina, in Obuasi, etc., etc. Do you think the conference market is something that, government should consciously push for? And are we prepared to host the numbers if the people start coming?
Ghana's tourism is basically business tourism. We're not into the leisure and we're not into the other areas. But when you take the conference, the reason why it went up and it's coming down is this. We didn't coordinate the facilities, okay? Because conferencing, you need your conference facilities. That is okay. But where would the people sleep? If you take all the top hotels, they form just about 0.3% of all the hotel stock that we have in Ghana. But it's only this 0.3, and they are the 4 5-star hotels that attract the business people. When they come, we don't have space for them. How many rooms? Add all the rooms in the 4 5-star hotels in Ghana, and one conference alone will fill all these hotels. So whilst we are trying to develop the conference tourism, we should also look at developing our accommodation sector, our transportation sector, because if they come around and with the sort of traffic that we have, how do you even move them from facility to facility? It becomes an issue. And currently now, if you have maybe a conference of about 300, you may have to use minimum of 2 hotels to host them, and that means that there's even nobody in the hotel, okay? And it's fully occupied by conference people. So we need to package it as a product in order that we be able to move forward. But if we think that we're developing conference, yes, we keep saying it, we're developing conference facility. What are you developing? Conference rooms. And if you develop the conference rooms, what about accommodation? Right. What about transportation? Right. What about the other ancillary services that need to go with it?
As you said, it's intersectorial.
It's intersectorial. So we need to really do a packaging. Okay. And that is the way that we can go. As for the airlines, I don't know how we can come back to it, but if your only airline is not a restaurant, then it's good.
There is some development, at least domestic.
Yeah, domestic one is growing.
Have about in excess of 15
But we
airlines.
need a national carrier.
Right.
That is when you can sell yourself as a country. Very well. Okay. So I hope that the politicians are listening, that they will facilitate the acquisition of our own national airline and use it to promote tourism, Ghana as a tourism destination.
Doctor, we may have brushed it, but in your final comments, I want you to target the youth who may think that tourism, as you said, is catering, cooking. That's the end of it. I want you to encourage them, particularly from your perspective as an education person, somebody who's been very versatile in terms of training people. I want your final words to touch on that.
You know, when you take tourism and hospitality and you take the human needs, if you take Maslow's structure, the basic physiological needs is what tourism serves. We will not stop eating, we will not stop sleeping, we will not stop entertaining ourselves. And therefore, if you get into any of these areas, it means you have job for life. Right. Nobody will kick you off, okay? The other interesting part of it is that you can develop your own small facility. Right. Nowadays, it's even tabletop, and it's tourism, it's hospitality. Now, the key thing, events management. People are into events management, wedding planning. It's all part of entrepreneurship in hospitality. So you can get into hospitality, branch into various areas. The options are unlimited. Okay, but we need to do more. We need to get to the schools. We need to talk to them. We need to hold fairs. We need to hold national conferences on tourism. And if you're able to do that, you will create enough awareness in the system that it will attract enough people to join our industry.
Viewers, it's been a very, very interesting, educative chat. But we also need to ask ourselves questions. Did it have to take the Adome Bridge to be closed before we wake up that it's affecting tourism? Yes, it is affecting tourism negatively. Does the Elmina Bridge have to be left to rust away? Yes, it is affecting tourism negatively. The numbers have dropped from 9,000 a month visiting the Elmina Castle to less than 5,000 a month. Is this how we want to develop our industry? Yes, there's very good news. Let's look at Mole. It was reported that the trees are being cut down. How are the elephants and other wildlife supposed to survive? And it's not just Ghana. We are destroying our water bodies. These are attractions that people want to see, and not just foreigners, but locals. We need to sustain our development. And we believe that if tourism is treated with the way that it deserves to be treated, this country is going to turn around very, very positively. We have interesting things coming up. For example, in October, we have a very, very interesting air show, the first of its kind happening in Africa and happening precisely in Ghana. The prospects are good, but we need to understand that we need to commit 100% to developing tourism in Africa. Dr. Mensah Ansah, thank you very, very much for your time. We really appreciate it. And we are sure that much as the discussion may look like, what are we not doing, what are we not doing, corrective measures will be put in place so that next time we have such a discussion, it will all be very, very rosy. Once again, thank you, and we appreciate your time. Thank you. Viewers, thank you very much for spending your time with us. We are very, very positive that we've learned a lot on Tourism TV, on Business Television Africa. Join me next time as we delve deeper into the various tourist attractions and implications in Africa. Thank you. One of Ghana's leading facilities in terms of beaches. And today we are glad to have you on our show. And I just want to tell you that this is a very special show that is being carried all over Africa. So you have a very wonderful African audience to listen to us. And I know that with your profile, you are very much prolific in terms of tourism development. Dr. Mensah, tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of your involvement with tourism in Africa.
That's quite a challenging question because I really don't know where to start or where to end. My involvement with tourism in Africa actually started in Ghana. And I was so keen on tourism that eventually I wanted to know what happens in other countries in terms of tourism. Initially I was involved with operations, but along the line, it became to realize that education and human resource development was the key issue driving tourism. Right. So my interest gradually moved from operations into human resource development. And currently, I happen to be the chairperson for tourism and hospitality schools in Africa. So that's how far we have come. And this association looks at harmonizing training, tourism and hospitality training across the continent, trying to share lectures, trying to do student internships, exchanges, so as we can promote tourism across Africa.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. Now, Doc, with regards to tourism education, I don't think that is very, very well known and well pronounced in Africa. You hear people, when they're asked, what profession are you interested in, you know, they talk about human resource, project management, maybe banking, etc. Why are people not interested in training themselves and specializing in tourism development?
The solution is with the culture of Africa. If you can recollect, in those days, people into catering and people into hospitality were seen to be people who really didn't have a clear-cut direction, career paths. Right. But now, hospitality and tourism has become a profession, and it's become so technical now that professional education is needed in order to be in that industry. Even as of today, as we speak, especially in Ghana, if you speak of tourism, hospitality, people equate it to catering. Right. But catering is only an aspect of hospitality. We need to create awareness, which we haven't done. For instance, there is no sensitization or career counseling in terms of hospitality. Those people who have chosen hospitality probably just came across it per chance. And they join it because they find it as a passion. Indeed, I say hospitality and tourism is a calling. Right. You need to be called. You need to love people. You need to love making people happy in order that you may be in that industry. So it's actually not everybody who can really be in tourism and hospitality.
I'll give... Hello viewers, it's good to come to you once again. My name is Ralph Aite, your host on Tourism TV on Business Television Africa. We are here once again to delve into the tourism industry in Africa. Are we doing well? Are we not doing well? what are the potentials, what are the threats to the development of tourism in Africa. Today, I have a very, very special guest for you who has a very, very deep insight into the development of tourism over the last couple of years. Stand by and enjoy our program for today. Hello, viewers. Good to see you again. Today, we have Dr. Joseph Mensah Ansah, a very, very seasoned hospitality personality who is here with us to go, as I said, into tourism development in Africa. Dr. Mensah Ansah currently is a lecturer at the Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration, and he is ready to take us where we want to be with regards to upgrading ourselves in tourism in Africa. Dr. Mensah, you're very much welcome to the show today. Really, it's like me coming to you as a student to learn a lot, because I recollect with nostalgia that you were the very first manager for Buswa Beach. My personal example, because I came into the industry simply by serving my late dad's guests, okay? I was more or less the waiter of the house when everybody had left home. And then, you know, it progressed into that level of professionalism. Now, in Africa, we are reliably informed, and we know that Africans are very, very nice people. You know, we smile, etc. But when it comes to the service delivery, we find ourselves wanting. And, you know, sometimes there's the contention that we do it even without apology. Now, going back to this issue of education, obviously it's lack of education. How many institutions do we have in Africa that are strong enough, and are these just enough for us to be able to get to the pinnacle that we want to be in terms of tourism development?
In terms of the whole of Africa, I dare say that there are some countries that are extremely strong with tourism training. Mention countries like Kenya, Seychelles, Mauritius, South Africa, Morocco, Egypt, okay? Now, these countries set out to train their staff, and they have national tourism and hospitality schools. So every country in Africa that is doing well has a national tourism and hospitality school. Okay. Those countries on the west coast of Africa, surprisingly, we don't have such schools. Right. So Ghana, Gambia used to have one that is not doing too well. Nigeria, there's a proliferation of schools that we really don't know what we're doing. But take South Africa, they have virtually about 15 well-recognized schools up to the university level. Kenya has Utali College, that is a world center for tourism and hospitality training. Mauritius has it. So if you want to develop your tourism industry, but the first way to go is to have a national tourism school. Otherwise, you'll be beaten about the bush. And the issue of Africans, you know, we are keen in doing service, but I always say that we do the right service wrongly because we don't know the principles of service. We think that being nice with people is hospitality. No, hospitality has moved beyond that. Hospitality is now so technical that you need to be schooled in how to serve. Now, if you don't have those technicalities and you think that just meeting somebody and smiling or giving directions, even in directions, we give directions wrongly because we don't know what it is. We use a tree, we use the kiosks, we use color of buildings and so forth. Right. But hospitality is a profession by itself. And unless African countries come to realize that hospitality is a profession, we will just be beaten about the bush.
Okay. Viewers, let's share some statistics. The African Development Bank is telling us that Africa's arrivals grew from 37 million in 2003 to 63 million in 2012. So that's about 100% change in 10 years. And then international tourism receipts in Africa totaled 43 billion, okay? And we move on, as you rightly said, Doctor, that where the schools are, it reflects that in 2012, Morocco, Egypt, Madagascar, Seychelles,